If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniac. As someone who has grown up on an infamous haunted plantation, I've never actually been scared of ghosts. Curious and intrigued, yes. Scared? Never. In fact, I've gone through a lot of trouble just to go to a haunted house or location. I lived in Virginia, so there's lots of places to go to up in the forests. There has only been one incident that scared me so bad I'll never ghost hunt again. When this particular event happened, I was 19, and me and my boyfriend were exploring. We made it a thing to go around at midnight to go ghost hunting at random places. He lived in Williamsburg, VA, so there were lots of places to go. We would go around the Newport area as well. Some famous places that we visited often were Old Housewoods, Crawford Road, Roswell House, etc. One night we decided we're bored and we wanted to go out with a group of friends and do ghost hunting. We got 3 of our friends on board and get ready to head out for the night. We usually make sure we're nice and toasty when we get to our destination, stand in the warm for a while before. We decided to check out Roswell. Then on our way back home, we're going to take a detour through Crawford Road. The night started out really fun. We basically couldn't stop laughing the entire night. One of my friends, on the other hand, couldn't shake this bad feeling. He insisted that we go home or get some food at a fast food place. He was also insisting that we skip Crawford Road because it was too out of the way from their apartment complex. I was very insistent that we checked out Crawford Road. Since my boyfriend was driving, it didn't matter. We jumped back in the car, get some McDonald's and head over to Crawford. Crawford Bridge is just this little bridge on a very desolate, creepy road. If I remember correctly, the road's about 10 miles long. The bridge was where they would go to hang people, and ghost sightings are common. So we got on Crawford Road. We decided that we could get out of the car to take a better look. Now I remind you, it's about 1:30 AM. I'm not scared, but get scared of the idea of what happened here previously. At the time I thought my friend being scared all of a sudden was strange, because he usually loved doing this stuff. He kept on saying he had a bad feeling. He had a bad feeling and that he always trusts his gut. Now we should have listened. We were all too stubborn and are almost on the bridge. Right as we come around the corner to the bridge, we see a car just park on the side of the road. As we get a little closer to the car came on the same side of the road as us. We assumed it's some teenagers checking out the landmark like we were, but as we're about to pass them, I see the outline of 2 older men. I did see that they were both bald, sending chills down my spine, so I tell my boyfriend keep on driving. He agreed that we shouldn't get out or stop. So we passed slowly, but when we were about to turn the corner to the bridge to be out of view, I saw that the car slowly turned around, turns on his high beams and starts following us. At first, we're a little freaked out, but you know, coincidences happen. About 2 miles down the road, the car's right on our tail. We decide to go faster than normal to lose him. The speed limit on the road was 30 to 40 miles an hour. We're going 65 just to try and shake the car. The whole time the car was so close to ours, it's almost touching. At this point, we're all officially freaked out. My friend who was originally freaking out was now in tears. We officially were being chased by these guys. I felt a lot of relief when I saw that there's a turn onto a highway ahead. There are almost no cars on the road, so we didn't even stop at the stop sign. We ran right through it, and so does a car behind us. We saw a 711 up ahead, and we thought if we turn into it, that they would just keep going and leave us alone. But no. They decide to follow us right into the 711 parking lot. We would be the only ones in the parking lot together, and at the time, I didn't think any of us wanted to come face to face with the mysterious bald man. My boyfriend then unexpectedly punched it out of the parking lot, follows the mysterious car. At this point, we're all honestly thinking we're about to die. We had no idea what the intentions were of these people, but we knew obviously it's not good, and we've been specifically targeted. Once we got on the road, we're going at easily 100. We're all screaming, and I managed to call the police, but I was in hysterics going 100 miles an hour in an area I'm not used to. At some point, the car got from behind us and into the other lane. I look over, thought I saw a flash of something metallic coming up in their window. Then suddenly my boyfriend slams on the brakes. The other car keeps going 100 as we quickly turn around. When I look back, I see them doing the same thing. But by the time that they've turned around, we're already flying in the opposite direction. Somehow, I'm not sure how, but we lost them. We try and find the most populated area that we could. Once we found a random apartment complex, we stopped the car and are all crying. My friend who told us we shouldn't go yelling at us. He's going on about how you need to trust your instincts. Let me tell you, I've never not trusted them since. This happened 10 plus years ago, so I'm paraphrasing for all parties. Now it's not the creepiest story, but unsettling to say the least. My dad and I were hiking on this mountain trail that was super steep and treacherous. No exaggeration, at some points I was legitimately worried I'd fall to my death if I even took the wrong step. It wasn't a super long hike, but super challenging one. Eventually we made it to the top. We had brought food with us, so we sat down and started snacking. Maybe 10 minutes later, this guy comes out of this bush. A lone bush. He literally came out. So obvious he was hiding there. Let me just say, I'm not trying to sound rude, but this guy was huge. An unhealthily large man. My first thought was, how did that guy make it up here? Again, not trying to be rude. I was genuinely curious as to how he made it up here. I was out of breath, and so was my dad. The guy was not, though. Interaction goes like this. Guys, hey, can I sit with you guys? Before we could answer, he sat down on the rock next to us and starts talking. He was asking the most cliche creepy questions like, where do you guys live? How old are you? Are you married? Now I was 13 at the time, and you're pretty. My dad immediately stands up, gives me a head nod like, move behind him or away from him. Tells the guy he wants to spend some time with his daughter. My dad was super polite, but I could tell he was thrown off. We start moving our area, and the guy says, hey, screw you, aggressively towards my dad. My dad says something along the lines of, watch your mouth, my kid's here. We did have a rifle on us, but that didn't seem to register to the guy. He definitely saw it though. It's on my dad's back. The guy just sat there on the rock and would not go away. He was staring us down. In his defense, there wasn't really anywhere for him to go except back into the bush or down the mountain. He kept staring. He honestly gave me the most uneasy feeling. This situation was classic horror movie stuff. My first thought is that he was mentally disabled in some way or mentally disturbed and was probably harmless. But after we moved, he started threatening us, saying stuff like, "I'll beat the crap out of you, you won't speak to me like that." That's when alarms really start going off. The situation escalates pretty quickly thereafter, so my dad takes a rifle off his back and whispers to me to stand up and walk down the mountain. He'll be right behind me. The next part is from hearing movement and footsteps because I was following my dad's order, but I could hear the guy starting after my dad, asking why were they leaving. My dad turns around and screams at him to back off. I hear the click from the safety and thought, is this seriously happening now? He wasn't trying to be bad, the gun was for bears, but the guy eventually backs off. My dad called up to me and said everything's fine and just keep going. We made it back to the car, locked the doors and drove out of there fast. To this day, I don't know how he got up there. People hunt on the other parts of the mountain and hike there during the appropriate seasons. You cannot legally live there. God knows how long he'd been there and what his intentions were. I'm just glad that my dad had a rifle. That guy was really like a bear. My friends and I decided to take my girlfriend at the time to see this beautiful nature area, deciding to go to a national park about an hour and a half away from where I actually lived. This place is definitely no sort of secret location. It's very well known, but there's a ton of different areas to it, all with different rural and windy roads taking you to various areas of the park. We had gone in 2 different cars. We'd finished out by a day of hiking and were heading down to one of the less common roads. Now I remembered seeing this really beaten up 70s sedan with a wild looking dude in the driver's seat driving past us in the opposite direction. This isn't uncommon as there's a lot of smaller, less economically sound towns scattered around the area. But for some reason, his car stood out. My girlfriend notices it as well. About 200 meters further down the windy road, there's a pull-off area. There was a camper van belonging to a company that mostly rented out colourful vans to backpackers parked there with a woman standing in front of it. As soon as she sees us, she jumps out to the road and flags us down. Now I've read enough of these to know what to do, and know that pulling in might not be the safest idea. Though I ignore this and decide to pull over, knowing my friends are behind. Luckily she wasn't the person I didn't want to meet. She was quite obviously upset and scared when I pull in. I told my girlfriend to wait in the car, and I got out to speak to her. She's almost in tears. I can't remember where she was from, but a Central European country from memory. Touring around with her 4 or 5-year-old daughter, she told me her van had broken down, and she had pulled over there and called the van company's assistant line for help. By this time my friends had pulled up behind us to see what's up. Apparently a weird man had been driving past her a few times, first pulling over to offer to take her and her daughter to the nearest town for help, but thanking him and saying no, that she's waiting for assistance. He left, but then he kept driving past her every 10 or 15 minutes in the opposite direction, slowing down, looking at them driving off. She begged us to stay with her while we waited for the assistant vehicle. The guy terrified them. I agreed. My friends, being the awesome people they are, decided to take me and my girlfriend and ditch us. Thanks, guys. We wait with this woman for a little while before the car and my girlfriend I'd seen earlier drove past, kind of slowing down in the opposite direction. As soon as he'd driven around the corner, the lady says that's him, and he's been here so many times before. This got my girlfriend and I to take her much more seriously now, as we got the same feeling from that guy. A few moments later he came back from the opposite direction and pulls into the parking lot. For some context, I'm not an intimidating man. I'm tallish, but I have almost zero muscle and soft features, so there's not at all intimidating features on me. There's a terrified foreign woman, her daughter, and my girlfriend. So parked off in a quiet, secluded rural location, and there's some creepy dude coming up to us. Great. He gets out and is redneck as hell and definitely not friendly looking. No judgment on the redneck part. I come from a poorer country, from our city, and those are my people, but hopefully that sets a picture. At some point I walk towards him to put myself between them. He looks at the girls and me, saying, "Can he have help?" I say no. We're just waiting for the assistance vehicle and we've got it covered. He then says maybe he could stay and wait, so I don't have to. I tell him we're happy to stay and it's good. He kind of just stood there for a while staring at us. He didn't really say anything, just gives me creepy vibes. After what feels like an eternity, another car drove past us and kept on going. This startles him. He mumbles something and rushes off to his car. We waited with this woman for another 90 minutes and see him multiple times just driving past. The vehicle assistant guy finally arrives. I asked to see his ID to be safe and everything's good. She was really grateful and texted me thanking me later for staying with her. The thing I didn't like about this was how the guy had come back multiple times after being told to go away. Even if he was being nice, he would have had common sense to know that he has to leave, but clearly he had different intentions. Somebody actually got kidnapped from the same area months later. I'm just glad I was there to hopefully prevent this from happening. During the summer when I was a kid, I used to stay with my grandma for several days at a time. One week when I was 12, it was just my grandma and I in her home for 5 days. She owns a small handgun. The whole family knows she's not afraid to use it when push comes to shove. So one night, we both went to bed earlier than usual at about 11 PM. I woke up very early since there was no alarm clock in my room. I pulled the blinds looking out of the window, which was right next to me, to see what time of day it is. Now it's very dark. It was a rural town, so there's no cars, neighbours or streetlights. So I guessed that it's somewhere between 2 and 4 AM. A few seconds after I closed the blinds, I heard a deep male voice whisper, "Psst, hey, you." I knew that the voice come from outside the window. The room I slept in was on the opposite end of the house as my grandma's room. but since her house is pretty small, she could have heard me and woken up if I yelled. However, I was paralyzed with fear. I was actually able to convince myself that it did not happen by telling myself, "Oh, you were half asleep. It's probably your imagination." And sat still in my bed for an hour staring at the door. I was, however, eventually able to fall asleep and had a nightmare of a man running into my room. I immediately woke up. It was dawn, and I had gathered up enough courage to run to my grandma's room. We looked around the house for a short amount of time, and we judged that the man was long gone, and I went back to bed and woke up a few hours later. My mum was talking to my grandma in the living room, ready to take me home because it was my last day. When I walk into the room, my grandma told me what she saw on the news before I wake up again. A convict was being transported to a new prison and had escaped from the transport less than a mile from the home. At the time, I was 10 years old and lived in a small coastal town in Newfoundland that was littered with large forests. At the time, every house there literally had acres and acres of forestry behind it, which in itself is very beautiful. I'm now 21, live in a bustling city in Alberta. I do find myself missing this setting in my old backyard every once in a while, but it's usually accompanied by unsettling memories of what I'm about to recount. By the time I was in grade 4, I was already trusted to be home alone by myself, as my mother went out to visit my grandmother and aunt, who lived literally only a few minutes down the road from us. I was happy to have such privilege. I was an only child, and my father worked in another province for months at a time, so I was very lucky to have this opportunity. It usually meant late night movies and video gaming, and the odd bit of forest exploring. This night I was exploring said woods. I usually never went too far in. Usually up a large rock formation, I like to climb and look through the trees in all directions. The house was always in sight, so I never felt frightened or scared being there. It felt like my own private place I could enjoy. So as I was scaling the rocks to sit in my usual position, I suddenly heard a sound from further in. It wasn't natural at all. Crying. Fake crying sounding like a child, maybe even an infant relentlessly crying. I was more puzzled than scared, since crying is the last thing that I expected to hear in the forest. I must have listened to it for a good few times, convinced my ears are playing tricks on me, but no, in fact, this is crying. In my mind, I imagined it's a young girl that somehow wandered too far into the forest needing help. I considered going back to the home and calling my mother to help, but though I'm worried the girl was going to be beyond earshot, I decided to locate her on my own. Now, I made my way hastily through the trees and branches trying to figure out the exact destination the girl was crying in. It definitely wasn't as easy as I thought. It's a matter of trial and error to make sure I was going in the right direction. One thing I never realised while doing this is just how consistent the crying is, literally non-stop. What I did notice was that the closer I get to the sound, the more metallic it sounded to me. I eventually reached a small clearing with some trees and bushes on either side and nothing else. I had never gone this far in before, so this was the first time I'd ever seen it. When I made my way in, it didn't take that long for me to find the source of the sound. A grey tape recorder, one of the biggest I'd ever seen. I was peeking out, looking around and see no one. I now see the crying sounds coming out of the speakers. This really disturbed me, as I went all the way in expecting a real person, not a tape recorder. I was about to shut it off when I hear another sound coming from outside. It sounds as though footsteps are advancing in my direction. It only took a tall shadowy figure coming at me to make me shoot out of there. I was worried I wouldn't find my way back, but fortunately, by some miracle, I recognised my way back by identifying rocks and trees as landmarks. Looking back, this would have saved my life. I never looked back. I just kept going. I can tell that I'm being followed for the first part of this. I just kept telling myself I have to make it home no matter what. Once I saw a large rock formation, it didn't take me long to know the rest of the way without seeing the surroundings. I was out of the forest in record time and immediately ran to my home, locking and shutting the door. I didn't want this person to know where I lived, or I would have been done for. After shutting the curtains at my window, I peek out through them as discreetly as I can. I can't see anyone and I wait there for a good hour. It eventually gets dark. After this I go straight to bed. I never told my mum about what happened and I never went to them woods again.